and Daddy bought this place back in 1941, and if my memory is right, paid $11,000 for it. It's got about a half a mile of road frontage, and it's about a half a mile deep, 92 acres. Got a creek as the boundary on the lower side. The house was here, the barn was here. It was fenced and cross-fenced for $11,000 in 1941. There's about 10 or 12 acres across the road over here that was for sale, and they could have bought it for $1,000. But they wasn't sure whether they could ever pay for this place or not. They had a place on Davis Ford Road, which wouldn't be very far from here, and apparently it was already paid for. And they had 3 or 4 or 5 acres up around Mount Lebanon, not Mount Lebanon, but Pleasant Grove Church, where they grew strawberries. And apparently it was paid for. And they sold both of those, and about half paid for this place for the time they moved here. And the story was, they bought it from the Andersons, and the story was that the Andersons wasn't going to sell their machinery because they figured they'd get the farm back. They had a mistake on their part. I guess it rested away somewhere. But Daddy was working for Alcoa Aluma at that time, and I can remember early on that he said, as quick as he got the farm paid for, that he would leave Alcoa. And got the farm paid for in 45. In other words, they would have owed $5,500 for 41. In 4 years, they paid it off. And he quit. I mean, he quit just like a steer in the road. Probably been better on this if it had worked another 5 years, but from a financial standpoint, but that didn't happen. But anyway, in 41, when we moved over here, I was 6 years old. I was in the first row, and I remember the grove down there, just like it is now. Used to have a lot more trees in it than that. They went to town one day. The trees down there was a lot thicker than they ought to have been, and I had several of them chopped down with an axe when they got home, and it didn't go over too well. But that was a long time ago. But I remember when they bought the place, the yard down here was mowed real slick. Apparently they had a lawnmower and everything, and all we had was a little push mower. I mean, one of them, you know, you push 3 or 4 steps and back up and push again. But they bought it, and when they bought it, I was over here, and it was mowed real slick. And we didn't move for a month or 2 or 3. Of course, they didn't mow the yard, and when we came back over here, well, it was, you know, half-knee high, and it didn't look like the same place at all. But there was no water in the house, of course, no bath. Did have electricity. At that time, would have had a telephone, but it would have been an 8-party line. At that time, anytime you needed it, there'd be some sister on it for air. Talked about everything in the world, and if you needed it real bad, of course you knew who they were. You would ask them if you could borrow the phone and for just make an emergency call, and then you can have it right back. And they'd do that. They would get off and let you do that. But talking about work, they thought Keith was going somewhere else. Me and Andy and Margaret would have been born on Davis Ford. Margaret and me and you and Andy, and then Rosemary would have been born here, I think. Y'all don't know what work is, okay? Most of you literally don't know what work is. But we worked, let me tell you something. We were, all this down through here would have been garden slot between here and the preacher's house. They gave the church, Mom and Dad, they never did have much money, but they gave the church land where that building is right there. That'd be 40 years ago. 28 to now 11 over there. But all this was a garden spot down here. And we had maybe an acre of strawberries, quite a bit of tobacco, up towards an acre of tobacco, burley tobacco, pole beans, sold pole beans, sold Irish potatoes, sold sweet potatoes, anything that we could turn into $1, we sold it. Go to town on Saturday, maybe one would get to go, maybe one young would get to go. Everybody else stayed. You couldn't hardly get everybody in the car. It wasn't too stout back then. You know, it was 34 Chevrolet first night, you know. But we really worked hard. We milked cows, had 10, 12 great cows. I'm not talking about purebred Holsteins or purebred Jerseys or Guernseys or anything like that. I'm talking about some sort of a female that give milk. And they would be mixed breed, Dominica looking, maybe some Holstein looking, Jersey, Guernsey. And we milked them all by hand. Keith, our older brother that died at 41 with intestinal cancer, Bob and Jimmy's dad, Pat's dad. We built stanchions in the barn where it'd hold 8 cows. And we had 2 before it slide over, and you had a 20-penny spike on a nail. She'd stick her head in or get feed in, and slide it over and stick that nail down through the thing. But we built those by hand. Keith was a daddy of that. He's pretty good. He could do a little carpenter, and he could do a little mechanical and stuff like that. He's above average on that, a lot better than me. I can't do nothing.
And for those that don't know, he was a pastor of a church.
Do what?
For those that don't know, he was pastor of a church.
Do what?
He was pastor of a church.
Yeah. Keith went on and got a degree. Betty went on and got a degree, and was pastor of a church up in the Jefferson City area where Bob lives now, and was a school teacher. But anyway, back then they told you when to go to bed, okay? In other words, you'd work like a dog from daylight till after supper, and it'd be so hot, wasn't any air conditioning. You just sit out here in the yard, over in there, and wait on it to cool down enough where you could go and go to bed. And like I said, they told you when to go to bed. Not only did they tell you when to go to bed, they got you up. In other words, they got you up before daylight. Breakfast would nearly be ready when you got in there, okay? Nearly be ready. And we'd eat, and then go milk, and come back and separate the milk, and had a deeded out cream separator later on, and we'd sell the cream to UT Creamery, and what Blue John we didn't slop the hogs with while we drank it. We ate the chicken, we ate the tomatoes that the chickens infect, and we ate the taters that had specks on them, and stuff like that, and everything was value one when we sold it. Daddy was so straight that when he hauled a bushel of beans to Elder's cash store, they didn't even weigh them because he already had more on there than the 32 pounder or what it was, and they could tell by looking at it wasn't any, if they'd have weighed him, they had to pay him for more than a bushel. But he didn't want that. He just wanted to make sure they got good measure. Never did own a pickup. Took the seats out of the back of the 34 Chevrolet. Take the back seat out and the passenger seat in front. And that way you could stack bushels of baskets of beans and everything to haul it off. And Daddy pretty well did the hauling off. Mama did the packing and the washing, and us kids did the picking. I mean, that's just sort of the way it was. We've hauled the back off that old 34 Chevrolet. I got to go with Daddy one time, and we had the 34 Chevrolet stacked full of tobacco. I mean, I'm talking about come up where the driver's seat is. And back then you didn't ask a lot of questions. You just, they wanted you to talk it, tell you, you know. But we hauled that tobacco there. And all the way over there, I wondered how we gonna get home. And Daddy put a 10-quart bucket back in there somewhere. And we unloaded all that tobacco, and he sat on that bucket and drove back home. And that was
Where were you taking the tobacco to?
Dean's Landers Tobacco Warehouse for sale. See?
Oh, Dean's already handed off.
Yeah, it was already handed off. It was already bailed in. Back then you had bailed it.
Yeah.
You bailed it, and we had to tap in and bail it.
Two on top, two on bottom.
But talking about things that you can remember, all of us kids would have been born at home. I know Memorial wasn't there when we was kids, was it? I mean, it wasn't there.
It was just a little medical building.
But see, kids today, they run these toddlers in now the doctor's office now just like hot and cold running water. You're raising kids today with a flashlight on one, we think you're kidding. Back then, we drank out of the pond. If you run out of water, you drank out of the pond, you drank out of the creek. Look at tadpoles out of the way.
And tell them where the water came from in the cistern.
Do what?
We carried water from the barn,
Okay.
from the cistern.
We get in trouble, that's what we done.
The barn was right
We
out
got
here.
in trouble, they said.
It's right out here, y'all. The older grandkids can remember the barn, been out here. And our water supply was a hand-dug cistern. And it would have been, what, 10, 12 feet deep? And I
Yeah,
guess
it might have been 18.
maybe 18, maybe 6 wide. And the walls were plastered. The walls were plastered. It had a cistern. You could get up on it. When you was little, we was carrying water. You just have to get up on it. We could reach it. We was carrying an 8-pound bucket of water till we was 6, 7 years old. But anyway, the way that worked, it was a big old barn there when we moved here. And Daddy knew what months out of the year, and I can't even tell you what they were, but he knew what months out of the year it was, and she would catch the water. And Wiggletails wouldn't get it, okay? It's the truth. Now, he knew when the right months were, and not only that, he knew how long it needed to rain on the roof to get the bird poop off of it. And maybe the dead birds that are in the gutter would have had a strainer over the downspout going into the cistern, and would have had a diversion toward running out this way. It rain long enough that he's pretty sure it'd be clean enough for us to drink. And then he'd go out there in the rain and then he'd divert it into the cistern. And true story. Wasn't nothing common about that, okay? We wasn't.
We don't know how the water got to the house.
We wasn't any more peculiar than most other people were back then. That's the way we all did.
We don't.
But anyway, had a 3-legged black war skittle, carry the water to the war skittle, heated with wood, garage set right over there. You carried the hot water down there, and Mother washed with a wringer type wash machine in the garage. She'd usually wash at night because Mama worked in the field like we did, okay?
No woman to live.
Mama could throw up hay, okay, with a pitchfork. Mama could milk cows. Mama could spear tobacco. She could hand it up on the wagon. That's what she did.
Cook, too.
Do what?
She could cook.
And she could cook too. I mean, she could set a table like you ain't never seen. Never seen. Harry grew up in this
I'm not
community.
interrupted. You talking about her, I can see her now. We'd be out there working, they're putting up hay or whatever. And she'd be out there and all of a sudden she'd disappear. And she, I don't know how she knew what time. She'd come back about an hour or so later, we'd come to dinner. And that table would be covered. I mean, I don't know how she got it all ready.
Absolutely.
But she did. And I felt almost like she's adopted me. I don't know how many meals I ate over there. And one more thing, I'll let you go on. We had a hog right just a little ways off that lot. Me and Andy was out there talking one day. And Margaret said, Andy, I wish you'd get this and swap them hogs. And he just kept talking to me. I happened about the third time, Andy turned real slow, and he said, "Don't wish nothing you do yourself."
But for you that don't know it, Harry Sandys married Meg, that's Emily's sister. And Harry Sandys and my brother Tom Kenneth were best friends. I mean, I'm talking about closer to thieves when they was growing up. I mean, they were. I know that.
Tell them about your bicycle riding there.
Do what
Terry.
now?
Tell them about your bicycle. You and Tom.
There's a guy had a cherry tree out on the road there, about that third house down there. Andy said something, "Where I get some of them cherries? I want a bicycle." I went down and sure enough, that guy come out on the porch and beat me out. He talking about getting back up here on that bicycle.
You were the young kid on the block that didn't know any better. They sent you down there to get shot at. All they wanted was cherries. But back, the tractor that's sitting in my shed in Jamestown now is the 46 model, and Daddy bought it in 48. And Tom restored it. It's sitting up there now. First tractor I ever rode. But when Tom got out of the first grade, my brother Tom, when he got out of the first grade, he'd have been about 7, so I'm 6, 7 years older than Tom, so I'd have been 13 or 14. 13-acre field would be the long field there. It's a little different colored grass that goes all the way back, the long field. And I was plowing corn on that riding cultivator that's up to the house now, team of horses. And Tom was 7 years old, just got out of the first grade. And he was making white pine whistles. When I'd rest the horses, I'd hit him with it. I knew how to do that. And he was learning how to do it. And one time I had rested him and took off, and Tom come running out through there behind me, and I didn't know it. Jumped up with his left foot on that right gang, got off, bounced, and stuck his foot right in the spoke, and it turned his ankle all the way around, and broke his foot. And that's probably one of the worst things that ever happened here during the time we were growing up, when he broke his leg. And he's on crutches for about 6 weeks. He got good on them. He could run on them. I mean, he could got out and run a cow on them. But I remember when they took it down and they sawed that thing off, and the leg had been put up for 6 weeks and white as a snowflake, and the hair on it was growing upside down where that cast had been on it. Still the hair growing down like it ought to. It's about halfway it was turned up towards his face. And we couldn't hardly get him to walk on it for a week or two, but he finally got over it and he got to where he would walk. I remember Keith got the mumps. Y'all remember that, Margaret? About halfway fell on him. And I've thought a lot about that over the years. Apparently it didn't plumb fall, because if it fell, he couldn't have had any children, is my understanding. I mean, if they really did. Wayne said over at Red, he brought those over about the bucks a down. But anyway, they about fell on him. I can remember Doc Crowder coming out here. Another time, another story on Keith. We were down there in the 11-acre field and had the thrash machine set up, Andy. And our horses never did get used to a thrash machine. They made a lot of racket. This tractor here would have been pulling, the one Andy loaded would have been pulling the thrash machine at the time I'm talking about. And Ralph Morgan, Arnold Morgan, one of the Morgans down there, was on the wagon with Keith, and they pulled in there. And they idled these thrash machines down at the time you pull in there, kind of lets everything slow down a little bit. And then they'll rev it back up before you start feeding it. And about the time they revved it up, the horses were nervous, and Daddy was up front and up there around their reins and everything. But Keith had those check lines wrapped around his hands, around his wrist, in order to hold them. And the team ran off and kind of ran in a circle, and Keith fell off, and ended they were running in a circle, and his hands were hung in it, in the check lines. And ended they were running in a circle. He never did get under the wheel. And his hands finally came loose. And it took all the hide off of both hips. I mean, just literally remember old Bill Crowder came out here and doctored Keith at that time. But back then, if you, well, they wouldn't hardly let you be sick, I mean, to tell you the truth.
That's true.
It is true.
You
They
were
wouldn't,
weak.
they wouldn't hardly let you be sick. They would talk you out of it if you thought you were sick. In fact, if you got up and whining and let on like you didn't feel too good, the time Mama wet her fingers touched on your forehead, it needed to sizzle a little bit or something. Back then, they would give the apple to the one that was able to work. All you're going to do is sit around whining. Well, you didn't need nothing anyhow. But they put a premium on being well, okay? Now, if you don't think us Whiteheads kind of work on being well,
You learned
it's,
not to complain, didn't you, about it?
in other words, work on prevention. Work on prevention is what you want to work on. Try to stay healthy. And you get as old as I am, in case it makes any difference, well, you want to help all you can, in case it makes any difference. And if you can drug or drink yourself to death and die young, I think you can probably stretch it a little bit. You'll try. But anyway, there's just a lot of things are so different today. I mean, I'm so old that I've decided why people get old and die. They need to get out of their misery, because things have changed so much that you can't hardly stand thinking about it. You watch Fox News or CNN or any of them for a while, and it'll about mess your mind up. So you get old, the only way you get relief from that would just be if you just went on and get out of your misery and not have to put up with it. But anyway, in the insurance business, where I'm 82, and we've got people working for us all the way down to 29, and here I am counseling 30-year-olds, 35-year-olds, sometimes 45 or 50-year-olds. And I'm trying to get on the same sheet of music with them and understand them a lot of times. And sometimes it's impossible for me to understand them. And I know that most of the time it's probably impossible for them to understand me, or how my mind runs, or what makes it run the way it does. But talking about back then. Back then, if you had $1, you didn't spend the whole dollar. I remember is that Ken Talbot's house right there, Andy? Is it still there?
No, they tore it down, put brick house down there.
Okay. Ken Talbot, back before I went to college, I guess. Ken Talbot built a house down there. I can hear Mother talking about it right now. And the room in the community was that he had $10,000 in it. And I thought it was the dumbest thing, dumber than a box of rocks. I didn't think he'd ever live to pay for it or anything. So. But things have changed drastically. It's like this place at $11,000 with a house and a barn on it, fence, cross fence, creek through it, whole 9 yards. And